All right, we're back. We're live from the ASB Financial Studios in Fly on the Wall Productions, Main Street, Barrie, Vermont, as always. And we remind you, if you enjoy the podcast, give us a like, post up a comment, give us a share, say hello, tell your friends, follow the page, all that fun stuff. We appreciate your eyes and your ears. It is an absolutely stellar day, 72 degrees and mostly sunny right now with John Sayles, who is right next to me, the CEO of the Vermont Foodbank, one of the busiest guys on the planet. Thank you ever so much. We are quite humbled that you're here today.
Well, I'm really happy to be here. And as I was saying,
Yeah.
just being able to reach people is
Yeah.
my job.
Yeah.
So making time for this is not a problem.
You do an outstanding job at that, I have to say. Kudos to your entire team, your social media, everything is. I could literally get on your social media and just look at what you guys are doing and go back and read and see pictures of what you've been involved with and how you're expanding for an hour easily. I mean, it's really impressive. How did the Vermont Food Bank? What was the inception of this and your role that you play? When did you get on board?
I joined the Vermont Foodbank in 2009. The food bank itself has been around since about 1983.
Okay.
Actually started right here in central Vermont.
Yep.
We are a statewide organization.
Uh-huh.
We serve 300 partners in every community in the state of Vermont, and we can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
But actually it was, early 80s. There were changes in federal government programs. The need was increasing. The local churches and organizations that were feeding people
That's right.
saw this huge explosion of need, and boom, it was people like Hal Cohen and Joseph Gainza and Joe Kiefer, Central Vermont folks that got together and said, we need to do something more. They leased a little warehouse, really a garage in Berlin, and started sourcing more food, and it's grown into this statewide organization. Last year we distributed about 17 million pounds of food.
That was one of my questions. 17 million pounds just in the last year.
In the last year. The year before it was 20 million pounds.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah, because of COVID.
So, I have memories, and pardon me, I'm getting choked up already, of seeing the vehicles, the line of vehicles up at the airport, at the Knapp Airport, when COVID hit. I apologize. It's
okay.
Emotional for me because we chatted with so many people that were just scared.
Yeah.
People that weren't previously in a position where they would ever have any reason to be fearful of not being able to put enough food on the table. And all of a sudden, this pandemic caught us by surprise. And it was food insecurity crossed some lines. It crossed some boundaries, and it went into families of people that never would have imagined that they would have had some stress or some anxiety about whether they were going to pay their heating bill, their electric bill, or be able to afford medications or summer camp or put food on the table. I mean, it was their mortgage, everything. It was huge. It was huge. And I just remember being up there and chatting with people who were pulled over with their cars not running for hours at a time, and just walking around and hearing their stories and just thinking, my God, I mean, the Vermont Food Bank is stepping up and saving so many rear ends here. I mean, it was very profound experience for me.
Yeah, I want to say prior to COVID, prior to all that
It was
happening,
an issue then.
It was more than 10% of the people in Vermont were food insecure, which means don't really know if they're going to be able to have enough money to buy food for their household for that month or that week or that day.
Sure.
And that is completely unacceptable.
Totally.
Completely unacceptable. And like you said,
Yeah.
COVID took us to a new level. You know,
Quickly, in hours.
in
a matter
hours.
of hours.
And you said it perfectly. People were scared, and rightfully so, right? And
It was panic.
It's
panic in the store. The shelves were going bare.
Right.
We're fighting over toilet paper. I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah. You know, it's really a privilege for the food bank and for all of our partners. I mean, you know, the Enough Ministries here. I know you have Dan on.
Oh, yes.
You know, everyone had to flip our whole business model on its head.
That's right.
And then
Figure it out.
expand by 100 times, all in real time.
Yeah.
There was no planning time. We had our COVID team at the food bank. We were meeting twice a day, every day, and making decisions about
On the fly.
about doing things that we had never done before,
Right.
as an organization.
Were you scared?
Scared isn't, I mean, it was one of those things, I guess, yes, because adrenaline kicked in, right?
Sure.
And
You got to make very quick decisions.
right.
You got how many Vermonters depending on you?
Yeah. You know, it was since COVID began, and we get these numbers from UVM researchers who have been reaching out to people. 1 in 3 families in Vermont have been touched by this at one point or another. You know, that doesn't mean that 1 in 3 families right now are worried about it. But at some point, people lost jobs. People lost massive amounts of hours. People, you know, lost their apartments and their homes, and just, you know, the devastation to our economy and to personal lives.
Sure. Everybody's priorities were flip-flopped all over the road.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to understand that we have not recovered. Good things are happening, better things are happening, but the folks who went through the devastation, the families who lost so much. Yeah, there were federal programs that came in and helped with rent, and there was, you know, additional 3 Squares Vermont benefits, and there was, you know, all those lines at the airports was food from the federal government that we were able to distribute in partnership. Those families and people have not recovered. We are not back to where we were before.
Yeah.
You know, and now with this wave of inflation, people are scared again, and rightfully so.
Sure. What are we? 8% now, I think.
Right. How are you going to fill your oil tanks this winter?
I spoke with a local business owner yesterday who's involved with the food industry, and his food has gone from monthly from 1,700 to 2,900.
So
just like that.
At the food bank, we have several sources of food. About half the food we distribute, well, this is pre-COVID numbers because we don't really know, but half the food is donated food.
Yeah.
So that's from the grocery industry, from national manufacturers, from local businesses, local farms. About a little more than a third of the food comes from 2 federal programs that we run. So it comes directly from the federal government.
Okay. About a third, you said?
Yeah. And then the balance we purchase. Well, when COVID hit, the amount that got donated has decreased, and it's gotten somewhat back up towards, but not all the way to where we were before. So we're purchasing more food now than we did now. We're part of the Feeding America Network, which is a national network of 200 food banks across the country. Across the country, the amount of money food banks are spending on food, food inflation is about 40%. So we're spending 40% more, and we're buying more food.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So donations needed more than ever. Right.
Absolutely.
And of course, this is at a time when people are hanging on tighter to their wallets than ever before.
Yeah.
With inflation.
It's, you know,
and the price of gas and everything else.
Right. And people are so amazingly generous.
Yeah.
Even in times like these, you know, we have donors who send us, you know, $10 a couple times a year. And
that's amazing.
And we have donors who can and have written checks in the seven figures.
Sure.
They are, each one is equally important and precious to us.
Of course.
Because it takes the whole community to support the whole community.
And those smaller donations probably stick to your bones a little bit more at the end of the day when you go home and settle down for the night.
Well, I'm telling you, I've gotten the proverbial letter from the little old lady, with a $5 bill tucked in there and a note about how important this is. And that $5 or $10 from some people is the same, proportionally as $100,000 check from someone who's very wealthy.
True.
And it hurts, or it doesn't hurt, but it has the same impact on their finances.
That's right.
And we recognize that, and that's why we really honor all the gifts, because it's about people wanting to help their neighbors.
Of course. That's the bottom line.
That's the bottom line.
And the heart that's involved is very similar.
Yeah. Between
these folks. Mackenzie Scott, a couple of years ago, COVID. This was, tell us what happened. This was a huge story. It was everywhere. It was all over the place. And it hit at an amazing time.
It did. So Mackenzie Scott, who is the former wife of Jeff Bezos and owns a large part of Amazon, a lot of Amazon stock, has been giving away her money at a really rapid clip. And she's given away literally hundreds of billions of dollars with a B. And in December 2020, she made another bunch of gifts, and 42 of those went to food banks across the country. And one of them came to the Vermont Foodbank. And we're just very, very grateful. It was a gift of $7 million, unrestricted, meaning that she didn't say, I want you to spend it on X, Y, or Z. Wow. Spend it how you think you need to.
It's amazing.
We trust you. And 41 of my colleagues around the country got the same, which is really pretty incredible.
Where were you when you found this information? How did this come to you? What was that experience like?
Yeah. I actually just got an email from someone I'd never heard of saying, I have a donor who's interested in making a gift to the food bank. And I get these, we get these from philanthropic advisors.
Sure.
And so, I sent her an email back, and she wanted to set up a time to have a phone conversation. So we set up a time, and I called her, and we talked, and she just let me know that the donor was Mackenzie Scott, and this was the gift that she wanted to make.
What'd you say?
I said, thank you. I said, I'm shocked. It was really, your heart skips a beat. Got to take a deep breath. And, we talked a little bit about the details. But, boy, there's not a whole lot to say except for thank you.
I know. You really can't much more. And this is a small state.
Yeah.
This is a small state. What did you how is the money, has the money been spent, and how is it or was it spent?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the gift came in December 2020, and I had said publicly that we considering this a gift really to the state of Vermont, as much as to the Vermont Foodbank.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that the benefits of this gift are, long lasting.
Yes.
So we took half of it, and that's designated to supporting our basic work, our core work of getting food out there.
Yeah. Keeping wheels turning.
That's right.
And
that extra cost of purchasing food.
Right.
We know that Mackenzie Scott money is there.
Yes.
To support that work.
Right.
And to leverage our other donors and the donations they're making.
Sure.
And then we took the other half and we divided it up into 3 buckets. And really one is what we call expanded core work. So that's what we're doing on top of what we did prior to COVID.
Yeah.
To make sure that we're able to meet the expanded need.
Yep.
And then we're doing 2 other projects. One we call deep community work. So it's investing actually in specific underserved communities in Vermont. So we're working right now in the Northeast Kingdom, in Addison County, and in Bennington. And really just bringing extra resources and coordination. So what is that community already doing to lift itself up and do things that will, in the long term, support people not being food insecure, having enough money to buy food? It might not in the short term mean giving them more food, but it's in the long term going to benefit that community.
And as a CEO, you had to sit down and quickly figure out how to sustain this and not be impulsive with it.
Right.
Let it stretch it.
Right. And we reached out to our partners. We talked to our board members. We talked to some community members. Just get different ideas and thoughts about, what would be a way that would honor the intent of the donor.
Sure.
And support people in Vermont.
My goodness. Has your phone been ringing about formula?
A little bit it has, but I don't know what the formula is.
The baby formula.
I'm sorry, the baby formula. Yes, it has a bit.
Yeah.
So interestingly, we don't carry or deal with baby formula.
Right.
Because
it's a different animal.
It's a different animal, and there are very strict code issues.
Yeah.
And right now you can't get it. We couldn't get it if we wanted it. Now we do partner with the state of Vermont and some other organizations, places like the community action agencies that run Head Start.
Yeah.
That do Capstone, right?
Yeah.
Here. That do deal with baby formula, and so we've been helping logistically in any way we can. But we have never distributed baby formula or baby food.
Sure. Lily, my daughter, had a cereal box the other morning. She was eating cereal, and I actually took the box and I cut this out because I wanted to bring it in and show it to you. This is right off of her cereal box.
That's right. It says 1 in 8 people in America struggle with hunger.
Yeah.
That's from a partnership with Feeding America, our national organization.
That's right.
Feeding America has lots of national branding partners.
Sure.
Yeah.
And the other part of the box that I ripped off right here says hunger is closer than you think. 38 million people face hunger in the United States, including nearly 12 million children and more than 5 million seniors. Hunger knows no boundaries. It touches every community in the U.S., including your own. There isn't an island anywhere where you're going to get refuge from this.
There isn't.
It's just the way it is.
Yeah. And I'm that brought up seniors, and it's our older Vermonter neighbors. We're seeing more and more of them coming into our food shelves and coming to we have a food distribution we call Veggie Van Go, which is a drive-through. Oh, yeah. In fact, here right here, we do it in partnership with CVMC, right here in Barrie, and
it's still going on.
It's still going on. It's getting a little challenging because of the numbers are increasing. So, in February, we had 214 people show up here in Barrie. In May, it was 529, and we're seeing that in places like Newport, Springfield, all around the state. Just these big increases, and it's challenging.
Sure. Because
it's hard to plan if you don't know if you're going to get 300 people or 600 people.
Of course.
So we're figuring that out.
But logistically, there is so much that's involved with these Veggie Van Goes. They're all over the state, right?
They're all over the state.
How many communities and how often?
So we do them either every other week, twice a month if it's in partnership with a school.
Yeah.
And we do them once a month in partnership with the hospitals.
Okay.
So we increased the number of them during COVID by about 30%.
Wow.
So we're doing, I think, about 35 every month across the state.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
And it's still not enough.
It's still not enough.
Isn't that something? You mentioned schools, and that was one of the questions I was going to ask you. Schools just finished up or are finishing up as we speak here. Summertime is a whole different thing for families. Everything is different. The dynamic of the family is different. A lot of kids are fortunate enough to get to a summer camp, but many aren't. School, we've got food for all children, regardless of income, family income, whatever. Summertime, things change. Things are a little different. And how is the Vermont Food Bank? How are they cognizant of that and saying, hey, we're going to try to take the edge off?
Yeah. So you're right. For every child that's in school that's getting free meals, that's 10 meals a week, breakfast and lunch.
That's right.
That the parents need to provide that they don't need to provide during the school year.
Yeah.
And particularly for our parents with low incomes, it can be really challenging.
Sure.
So it's a complex, unfortunately, issue. There's a myriad of different programs out there for kids in the summer.
Yeah.
Now, there are federal food programs,
yes,
summer feeding programs.
That's right.
And those are often at summer camps,
sure,
at community centers, and also sometimes even at schools. They continue feeding the kids during the summer.
That's right.
Now, there's a lot of federal rules around that, and this year there's some strange goings on. So, not to get too detailed, but Congress didn't reauthorize a piece of language for the USDA. So USDA was not able to waive requirements for summer meals this year. Bottom line, fewer kids are going to be eligible for the federally reimbursed summer meals this year.
Wow.
And that's, I'm going to, a little tip of the hat to our friends at Hunger Free Vermont,
Please.
who work very closely with all the summer meal programs and school meal programs.
Yeah.
Great organization. We work hand in glove with them.
I know you do.
Yeah.
And their branding is all over your branding and vice versa. I was going to ask you, what is Hunger Free Vermont? Layman's here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me finish
please,
kids.
Please, yes.
And then I'll talk about Hunger Free Vermont. So Hunger Free Vermont is working to make sure there's as many free meal sites available in the summer as possible. The food bank is coordinating, so we're looking for what are those communities where there are gaps.
Yeah.
And there are a few of them that we know about, and so the food bank is figuring out ways that we can get more food into those communities. Again, like you said, it's logistics.
Yeah.
And that means, another truck roll and getting the right food that's appropriate for kids, because, you can't give a kid a head of cabbage, right?
Right.
That doesn't work.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So let me talk about Hunger Free Vermont a little bit. So the food bank is an organization that provides food. 17 million pounds of food last year. All of our partners are the food shelves and meal sites and senior centers and after-school programs and homeless shelters all over the state. We do direct distribution too, and some other things, programs. Hunger Free Vermont works mainly around federal food programs and making sure those are maximized so that every kid who's eligible for a school meal in Vermont has that school meal available to them.
And families are aware that
That's right.
They need to find out if they're eligible.
That's right. And Three Squares Vermont benefits, making sure that everyone who's eligible is applying for and getting those benefits.
Yeah.
That is the most efficient and effective way to solve hunger in this country.
Yeah, big
people
job.
People can go to the store and buy the food that their families want and need, which is what those of us who have money do.
Yeah.
And frankly, as much of a vital role as our food shelves play, they can never have the kind of variety and choice that families need. If you have dietary restrictions or
Allergies,
just your kids
whatever.
don't like certain food.
Right.
we want people to be well fed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Hunger Free Vermont makes sure that we're maximizing all those federal programs. In fact, Honor Horton, who's the executive director of Hunger Free Vermont, and myself are heading down to D.C. today. We have well, she's already on her way. I'm leaving later this afternoon, but tomorrow we're meeting with Representative Welch's office, with Senator Sanders' office, and with Senator Leahy's office to talk about the federal food programs and how they can do more for people in Vermont.
This is fascinating to me to hear all this. What's going on Route 302? What a building!
Yeah.
And I see you in there. What's happening over there?
So the food bank, we have had our distribution center and really main administrative headquarters in the Wilson Industrial Park right here in Barre.
Yes.
Since 2000, that building opened.
Yeah.
And it's 22 years old, and it needed some work. The layout wasn't right for the way we're doing work now, and all the systems were starting to fail. The heating and air conditioning, and so we're renovating that building, and we're in the middle of that. It should be completely done by the end of December, the end of this year.
So you're going back?
We're going back.
So this is
temporary. So
wow.
we've leased this building on 302. And we're working out of that temporarily. We also, about 2 years ago, we built a brand new 5,000 square foot cooler freezer at the Wilson Industrial Park location. So we're still using that, and using.
Have to.
Yeah. We couldn't recreate that.
Sure.
And so we're working out of 2 facilities, which means our drivers need to load up at 2 places every day before they go on their routes to pick up and deliver food.
Wow.
And so we're excited. This is long overdue. We've been talking about it for years and years. We actually raised all the money to do this work prior to COVID, and we just couldn't because things exploded.
Yeah, of
and
course.
There was no way we could
Sure.
set aside what we were doing and make the time and effort.
How many staff members? What's the team like? And is it growing? And are you hiring?
Yeah. So we are a statewide organization. We have this facility in Barre. We also have distribution centers in Rutland and in Brattleboro.
Okay.
And right now we have a little over 80 employees statewide. We are hiring. If people go to our website, vtfoodbank.org, and you scroll to the bottom, click on employment, you can see all the job openings we have. I like to say we're a great employer to work for.
Understatement.
We care for our people as much as we care for the whole community.
Oh, I've heard many times actually. The supply chain. What's the impact?
It's been pretty significant. So nationwide, people know the kinds of things that they want aren't always available. So we're buying food and getting food donated by the tractor trailer load. We get the 53-foot tractor trailers that pull up to our facilities and unload.
You're lucky to get them.
We're lucky to get them, and they're not coming as often as they did.
Right.
Even the federal food that we get, so the USDA purchases food in bulk. They purchase, I think last year was $450 million worth of food that went to food banks across the country. And so that's called the TFAP, TEFAP program. And a lot of the orders that we place for TFAP food get canceled because of supply chain issues. Wow. There's also interesting things like because of COVID and supply chain. So, for instance, if there was a company that was making 60 varieties of beans, they may have narrowed that down to a dozen.
Yeah.
And fewer companies are creating new products or reformulating products. Those were a lot of the donations we got. So if a company creates a new product, say, some kind of canned spaghetti, right? They do a test run for quality control.
Yeah.
Well, they may do, 1 million units to see how that runs. They may not want to sell those, so they would donate them through Feeding America.
Wow.
Well, if those new products aren't being developed, those donations are slowing down, and we're seeing that. And also, interesting if a pallet gets damaged, say at a distribution center, a pallet is a big, big square piece of wood, and they pile product on that, and that's how things get trucked in pallets. So say there's a pallet of dry soup mix, and a forklift runs into it and damages, a third of the boxes. In the old days, what they would do is just write that off and donate it. And so it would come to the food bank. We would go through the pallet and throw away the damaged boxes and distribute the rest. Well, now because the retailers are so desperate for the product, they're saying just send it to me anyway. We'll take the partial pallet, or they'll rework the pallet. So the food that was being donated because of supply chain issues is perhaps not being donated now.
How concerning is that to you?
So far it hasn't reached the point where our shelves are bare because of supply chain issues. But over the long term, I think we're going to have to adjust our expectations. I'm concerned going forward about the continued food price increases. What's happening in Ukraine is really a crisis for the world food system. And
grains. What's made in Russia? I was reading about that.
Yeah, Ukraine is really the breadbasket of Europe.
Literally.
And most of their grains the exports are exported to Europe and to Africa and Asia. So it's really Africa and Asia that are seeing the immediate impact of this. But it's going to have a long-term impact. More of our grain here will probably be exported because prices are up.
When do you think is this residual? Is this inevitable?
I think some kind of reset is inevitable. You don't just flip the switch back on for something like is happening in Ukraine. Even were the war to end today, some crops weren't planted.
Right.
Processing capacity has been destroyed. Grain silos have been destroyed.
Yes. Yes. Been reading about it.
I learned this that fascinated me. Ukraine is the number one producer of sunflower oil in the world, which is a common ingredient in processed foods.
Yeah.
So everyone's scrambling to find alternatives. And that's not just, you just pour another oil in. They have to reformulate to make sure that their product tastes the same, has the same texture, lasts the same. So it's very, very complicated and detailed, and we're going to see long-term changes, I think, in our food system.
Interesting. And I'm sure you're up with that and reading about it all the time, because it's coming down the pipe. I see it on my phone all the time.
Yeah, and we're fortunate too to have Feeding America, our national organization, which has those relationships with, the global companies, frankly, and so we get that information filtered down, very high level information.
What I love about the food bank is that you guys are huge. I mean, let's just say it like it is. It's a massive organization, but you haven't, at least in my opinion, you haven't become too big for your britches. You're so intimately engaged with local communities that you've made that kind of a staple. Hey, no matter what is going on, we are going to be involved with our community. We're going to have a presence. Our branding is going to be there. And look at what you're wearing. Tell us about that. Perfect example.
Yeah, I'm glad that you noticed that, because we work really hard in our culture to
Big
be
time.
Connected to our communities, because that's what it's about. So this is the Harpoon, not Harpoon anymore.
It used to be.
It was back in my day. Harpoon is still a sponsor, and we still love Harpoon.
Yes.
It is the point-to-point powered by VSECU.
Yeah.
It is a run, a ride. You can do a myriad of sporting events to benefit the Vermont Foodbank. This year it's on August 6th.
Okay.
And there's a big party at the State House in Montpelier all day. I encourage people to come out. You can get a lot more information, learn how to either sign up to ride or run or to sponsor someone who's riding or running at thepointtopoint.org.
All right.
Yeah.
And people turn out in droves on this, no matter what Mother Nature's throwing at us.
That's right.
Heat, rain, doesn't matter.
I ride every year. In fact, when I started the food bank in 2009, they looked at me and said, "You can ride a bike. You're riding." So I got on my bike and rode some, and I rode the 25-mile road ride, and I loved it so much I went out and bought myself a road bike and been a cyclist ever since.
Wow. The Point to Point. One more time.
Thepointtopoint.org.
All right. Again, August 6th, State House is where folks should go.
Big party. So even if you don't ride
Yeah.
or run or volunteer, you
Right.
can just come and have the party.
Yeah, which is fantastic. What else for community things? What have you done recently, or what else do you have on the horizon here that we should be privy of?
You know, we don't do a lot of events. Organizations do events for the food bank.
Mm-hmm.
So you may see
Right.
things right in your community
Sure.
that people are having a concert or a cookout or an event
Yeah.
for the food bank. What I would say to people is we as the food bank really need volunteers all over the state.
Yep.
Because we're doing our Veggie Van Goes. We use volunteers. And there's gleaning, which is actually going out on farms and harvesting what the farmer's not going to harvest. There's some great other gleaning groups around the state here in Central Vermont Community Harvest. I'll give them a shout out, Allison Levin. They do a great job. You should have her on your podcast.
Community Harvest. Central Vermont Community Harvest.
Right.
Okay.
And they work with folks like Dog River Farm.
Oh yeah.
And do gleaning there, and then just the food that they harvest gets distributed to our local community food sites.
So you have farms that will call you up and say, "Hey, we got a bumper crop of this or that," or "Hey, we've never called you in the past, but we need you."
Yes, absolutely. And we or some other organization will go out and harvest that, or the farm will call up and say, I had my automated harvester. I got too much spinach.
Sure.
I can't get it all to market.
Right.
Will you guys take it? Or squash, or potatoes, or onions, or carrots,
Yeah.
or
And you've got to move quickly.
we've got to move quickly.
It's
Absolutely.
perishable.
Yes. Yep. We get it in and out. Sometimes it goes straight from the field right to a network partner, like could be Capstone here.
Sure.
Depending on the amount. Sometimes it goes to one of our facilities in Barre and Brattleboro or Rutland, and then gets sorted and distributed out. But we like to get it out, within 48 hours.
And doing that is not a easy thing logistically, and it's not an inexpensive operation either. I mean, look at the cost of fuel right now. We're moving your trucks around.
35% the cost of fuel is up. And diesel, diesel's now $6 a gallon, and we
Sure.
have a fleet of about 10 trucks that are statewide on the road every day, picking up and delivering food. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, and drivers, and we got folks in the warehouse moving the food around. We got logistics people, talking to those 300 partners every day. I sit in the office and I hear the conversations about calling up. Here's what we have today. What can you take?
You hear that? That's got to be amazing.
Yeah, it is.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Wow. There's always been the word hunger is such a sensitive word. There's always been some stigma attached to it, I think. And it reaches all demographics, all classes in certain ways. And that's changed over the last couple of years. And I know we touched on this a little bit, but how do you think the stigma has changed? Has it improved? Have we been more accepting of it with COVID here, or is it better disguised, for lack of a better term?
What?
No one likes to admit that
No.
they're having a hard time making ends meet.
And we've made it a shameful thing to not feed your family.
Right.
I think that shame's a powerful, powerful emotion.
Breaking it down, it sure is.
Yeah. We have seen a real shift with COVID. Particularly, you mentioned at the beginning the lines at the airports when people were really scared.
Yeah.
And people came out, and I think a lot of folks came out and kind of saw how when you go to a food distribution, it's not a shameful experience. There are people there who are smiling, who are thankful to see you, that you're out, because feeding yourself and your family is something that keeps our communities strong.
Sure.
And so we want people to come out.
Right.
And I think some families and people in our older Vermonters saw, hey, this is helpful.
Sure.
And it doesn't feel bad. I'm going to go back. And so we've seen a sustained higher level of people coming to our distributions. I don't know if that means that part of it is, the economy, and there are more people who are having trouble having enough food or enough money to buy food.
Right.
But part of it is the people who I think really could have been coming all along, could have benefited from this, and now are seeing that it is helpful and are continuing to show up. And I celebrate that.
Yeah. Regardless of what they're driving for a vehicle or what they're wearing for a shirt.
You don't know anyone's story.
You don't.
Someone, can show up in a nice car, and they may have lost their job 4 months ago, and that's the car that they have.
That's right.
And they may, actually this happens a lot, they may be picking up for other families.
Yeah.
We have folks that come to Veggie Van Gogh's, pick up for 5, 6, 7, 8 different families that they know.
Yeah. There were people in line that were just there to pick up some food and to bring it into their community and find the elderly or find someone who may need some help.
Yeah.
And just to offer that, which is amazing.
Yeah.
It's got to be, it had to be I can't imagine what was running through your mind when all hell was breaking loose. And it was hitting the fan quickly, in a matter of days. What happened to America? What happened to Vermont? What was being said from our governor's mouth? Everything was happening so quickly. All of a sudden, nobody was moving around. No, the roads were barren. When this all happened in a matter of days and hours at some points, what was running through your mind as the CEO of the Vermont Foodbank? Where were you? What were you doing?
I live in Montpelier. I was at home or in the office. We went to remote for people who could. Obviously, the people in our distribution centers and our drivers couldn't go remote.
Can't.
Essential workers, and our top priorities were, number one, how are we just going to continue to do this? How are we going to keep the wheels on the bus, right? Number two was, how are we going to keep our employees safe and healthy?
Sure.
Really, that's one of the main reasons we all went remote. We need as few people as possible in our facilities so that our pickers and warehouse folks and our drivers and our logistics people are exposed to as few people as possible so that they stay safe and healthy. And we were able to do that. In my mind also, okay, this is going to be expensive. Where are we going to, who am I going to talk to? Going back there with you right now, JD, I'm getting a little worked up because I think about the donors who called me and said, what can I do? And, transfers were made into our account the next day.
Many of which you probably weren't even aware of that was happening so quickly.
Oh, it was. Yeah, it was. the outpouring of support was immediate and really humbling. And then we had as often happens with something like this, it takes the government a little bit of time to get its response in line.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
After that initial rush of donations from our donors in the community,
our neighbors, yeah.
We were able to leverage some of the government support, for things like the Farmers to Families Food Box Program. There was all the COVID relief money coming into Vermont. We were able to work with the legislature and get some of that money to do things like buy more food, to lease more trucks, to buy some new equipment for our distribution centers. So the state was a great partner. The state partnered with us with the National Guard in doing distributions.
Oh yeah,
we could not have done that without their logistics expertise. It was
amazing to see.
Right.
Amazing to see.
And we will not be the same as an organization.
Yeah.
We have changed in fundamental ways.
Yeah.
How that will sugar off over the next 5 years, I don't think anyone can tell you.
Sure. You'll also never forget how your community, how this state responded, whether it's the National Guard or private donors.
Or, the little old ladies I was talking about.
That's right.
Who are going, sending in another check or going online and making a donation to our COVID relief fund.
Can you get your hands on some ARPA for vehicles, for things that are going to help you logistically?
Yeah, we have.
Good.
We have. In fact, we worked with the state in that first year in 2020, both 2020, 2021, 2022. We got significant support through the state. Last year, it was about $6 million in ARPA funds.
Oh.
And this year coming up, another $2 million from the state in federal funds to really, that's going to be supporting our food purchasing. And I should say food purchasing and our grants directly to our network and community partners.
Mm-hmm.
That's been a really important part of what the food bank has been able to do. So, Dan, Enough Ministries.
Oh yeah.
Enough Ministries
Dan
can't go to the Salvation Army. They can't go to the legislature and say, I need $10,000. Can you make an appropriation? And then you have to have a grant agreement with the Agency of Agency of Human Services, and that money came to the food bank, and we said to Enough Ministries, "Here's a check, because we know you need this. You're out there buying food too. You're putting gas in trucks." And so just making grants to our partners across the state is just so important, and it was a role that we could play because of our scale.
Yeah. I think more Vermonters need to understand that the Vermont Foodbank is not a local food shelf where you can just walk in, get a loaf of bread, and some fresh vegetables and be on your way. And there's a little bit of a disconnect, I think, there.
After 13 years, I've come to peace with the fact that'll be a constant education effort.
Yeah,
and that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you doing with all that food? You hiding?
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. What do you mean you have an $18 million operating budget? Aren't you a food shelf?
Yes, right. Exactly. And I know Sue Minter speaks so highly of you. I remember the last time that you were on the podcast here. I think we were by Zoom.
Yes,
pretty sure.
Were. Yep.
Pretty sure we were. And I remember you saying that, and that was, boy, the tide was high then, that every day, every hour was different for you, that you couldn't really wake up every day and do the exact same thing every day.
Yeah.
Is that more so the case now, you think?
I would say it's as much the case right now. We were very stable there, chaotic but stable during COVID. We kind of missed the Great Resignation.
Yeah, right.
But now it's starting to happen in that people are starting to move around.
Yeah.
So we're having people leaving for great reasons. We just had somebody who got a great offer to further her career,
Right.
take a step up.
Yeah.
I applaud that.
Yeah.
And
Good for you.
And we'll find somebody to come in and hopefully lift that person up, and then they can go out and find another great place, or maybe move up in our organization.
I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Do you think we're headed into a recession?
I am not an economist. I would say I don't know. I'll put on my amateur economist hat and say I think we often talk ourselves into these economic conditions.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, I think if we talked more about the opportunities and less about the fear of what bad things might happen.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of fun to watch the stock market sometimes, kind of horrifying.
Look at this past weekend.
Wow. It seems nonsensical and reactive. And I think the more we listen to voices or places that are nonsensical and reactive, the more trouble we're going to get in.
Yeah.
So let's just talk about the fundamentals. Let's talk about our strengths and our opportunities. And I think we can get through this.
If folks watching, listening, want to volunteer, they want to do something with you in some capacity this summer, what's the go-to? Facebook?
You can go to Facebook.
There.
You can go to vtfoodbank.org. You can check us out on Instagram and get connected in that way. So the things that we need from people, the three things.
Yep.
We need folks to donate, both to the Vermont Foodbank and to your local food organization, your local food shelf, meal site, Capstone, Enough Ministries. We need you to volunteer. And at our website, there's a volunteer button there, and you can get all the information. And we need people to advocate. So it's really important that our elected leaders hear from their constituents that hunger is an issue in our communities and that we can do something about it.
And it knows no boundaries.
It knows no boundaries. Yep. That someone you know has experienced food insecurity in their life.
Yeah.
I guarantee you that.
Amazing. Fascinating to speak with you, my friend. I hope you come back.
I will.
We want to get you back in here. Okay. There's, we could talk about this forever. I think you're doing yeoman's work. I think your whole team is, and I think most Vermonters know that too. God bless you and your whole staff and everything that you have done for so long, especially getting us through the pandemic. And we rely on the Vermont Foodbank so much, 7 days a week. We all do, and we appreciate you.
Thank you, JD. It's great to be here in downtown Barrie with you.
Thank you, my friend.